a new beginning. We started the new year in the book of Ephesians. We've only got this week and next week, and then we go on to a new series. And we've talked about all the ways that Paul's eyes had been opened. And he uses the word revelation, which in the Greek it actually sounds like he has an apocalypse, this revealing. He's revealed that we're blessed, redeemed, adopted, chosen. It's revealed to Paul that in Jesus' death, resurrection, and ascension, by the coming down of the Spirit, that heaven is coming down. And there's a new creation springing up in front of us, where those who were dead are now alive, where those who were cut off are now brought in. And I think last week I might have asked the question of do you kind of think Paul's a little nutty? He's a little crazy. Because he's sitting in prison and he says, I'm a prisoner of the Lord. I said, well, if I'm locked up, I'd be a prisoner of the state of Illinois, not a prisoner of the Lord. But here Paul is. He doesn't mention Rome at all. He says, I'm a prisoner of Jesus Christ. He says, you guys think you're sitting down in pews? He says, no, you're sitting in the heavenly places right now. He had a different mind. He had joy in the worst circumstances. And the question last week was do you buy it? And if you do, then what does he say to do and all that? Well, he says, first off, let's get along. Let's have some patience with one another. Because we live in this new reality, and in this new reality, we're one body. With one Lord, one Spirit, one baptism, one faith, we're all connected. And so, what's best for you is going to be best for me, so let's get along. Well, he continues this on. We're talking, we're in chapter 4 this week, and we're still talking about the response to this new revelation. What do we do in light of it? And as we go into this new part of Ephesians 4, I have a question for you. I'm not sure if you've ever given this much thought, but sometimes I give this some thought. It seems to me that when I was growing up, it was a lot easier to be perfect than it is today. When I was growing up, what do? You don't drink, you don't swear, you don't steal, you don't lie. I can do those things. As a Christian, you go to church. You don't hang out with people who drink. As a Baptist, I guess. You pay your tithes. I did that. I didn't ever think I was perfect. I found things I could confess. But growing up, I was the good one in my family. You guys, I've told some of you, there's drug abuse in my family. It was, rough around the edges growing up, but I was the good one. So I have this sense I'm basically right there on the cusp of perfection. But as I've gotten older, the line seems to be moving. And it's getting a lot harder to be perfect. I'm not the only one who thinks this. I was telling some of you guys before the service, Michael Shore, you may not have heard of him, but one of my favorite sitcoms, he was a part of producing it, The Office, and then another one of my favorite sitcoms called The Good Place, he created. And The Good Place is really interesting. It's a sitcom, but it deals with philosophical questions of morality. And so he was a former comedian. Now he's a philosopher. And I tend to resonate with this. Michael Shore says the world is a complicated place, and it's getting more complicated every day. If you want to buy a pair of socks, you have to worry about the labor practices of the factory, where they were made, the environmental impact of cotton farming, and the carbon footprint of the shipping. By the time you've actually bought the socks, you're too exhausted to even put them on. See, he's maybe speaking for maybe this is sort of liberal, left-leaning kind of things. Labor practices might be a little more. Of course, environmental tends to be more left. But our world has shifted. It used to be that our society felt a lot of pressure to meet certain demands from the church. It was the church that looked down on the world. Now we live in a world where the fundamentalists aren't Christians as much. They could be, but the fundamentalists are kind of the liberals. And the source of judgment tends to be on the left. At least that's how I'm, and so my generation is starting to feel more of this pressure to worry about more and more things. Like, yeah, should I buy these socks? I gotta be responsible in even the socks I buy. It just feels like a lot. And so they did this study over the course of several years, 40,000 people. And what they came out with is that this is a growing pressure. The belief that our social context is excessively demanding. Everybody say demanding. Demanding. It's increased by 33%. There is a moral exhaustion around us. It's so funny. It just seems like my prediction is that by 2026, we would get to a point where we're not judging each other as much. And, I had this impression that we're becoming less Christian in our society, so that means we're just kind of letting whatever happen. But the opposite has happened in a lot of ways. As our society's gotten less Christian, our society's gotten more judgmental. And individuals are feeling more of that, the eyes on them. People feel like they need to be a brand, and they need to worry about how they're perceived constantly, like they're constantly being watched for every little thing. And so, of course, this is leading to more anxiety in our world. Show of hands. Have you ever felt morally exhausted? Maybe a little bit. Maybe a little bit. Okay. Well, we're gonna figure out about morality, because if not you, then someone you know is feeling morally exhausted right now. And let's figure out what does it even mean to be moral? What does it mean to do the right thing? Well, this is something I've been so excited to preach on. I read on this, actually a book by Michael Schur. I read this, I think, over a year ago, and I thought, one day I'm going to preach about this stuff, and I just can't wait to share it. So here it is. There are 4 main theories of morality, and before I give them away, I have a couple statements. I want you to read through these, and I want you to decide which ones relate to you the most. So you're allowed to pick more than one, but maybe you just narrow it to one. But this is your gut. This isn't like a real thoughtful, this is what is right and wrong, but what does your gut say in your day-to-day? What does that inner voice tell you? Does it tell you shouldn't break that rule? How about this? Show of hands. Any of you who are rule followers? My wife would have her hand straight up right now. Any rule followers here? Yes. Don't break the rule. If there's a sign that says don't step on the grass, ooh, you do not step on that grass. How about you aren't doing enough? You could be doing more. Any show of hands? That is me. If my wife is the first one and mine is the second. How about this? You don't have to treat them nice if they mistreat you. You kind of have an out. I don't know. Anyone feel that way? Like, it's fine. I don't have to worry about them because yeah. And then you should be better. Anyone that inner voice says you should be better. Yeah, 2 hands. So we're going to give names to these. The first one is called deontology. Would you say that with me? Deontology. There is a right and wrong. There are certain rules that cannot get broken. You do not break those rules. So Immanuel Kant is famous for advocating for deontology. Sometimes I think it might be called moralism, but deontology. The next one is consequentialism. Say that with me. Consequentialism. Consequentialism says it's not so much what you do, but it's the results of what you do. Okay, so you might have heard of the famous trolley problem. There's a trolley that's going to hit 5 people. You know they're going to die. And there's a lever that only you can get to. And if you pull that lever, the track will shift and it'll only kill 1 person. So the question is, do you pull the lever? The deontologist would say, absolutely not. It's wrong to kill. You would be responsible for killing that person. The consequentialist says you would be wrong not to pull the lever. Okay? So this is it's like, okay, there's some real world, at least hypothetical real world, consequences for some of these beliefs. Or one is, if you knew the only way you would save those 5 people is if you push your friend off the bridge onto the track, and that would stop the trolley, does that change things? The deontologist would still say, do not push your friend off. The consequentialist says, you better push your friend off the bridge to stop and save those 5 people. The next one is called social contract theory, and that's kind of, some of what our country is based off of. It's this, why do we do good to one another? Because we're a part of a society. So Thomas Hobbes, John Locke wrote about these things. Social contract. This, to me, feels like kind of a breath of fresh air because the first 2 feel kind of exhausting. Social contract is like, okay, yeah, I can give myself a break. And then there's virtue ethics, which was really popularized by Aristotle, so very ancient idea here. And that is, it's not that you do good, it's not about something outside of you, it's about who you become. And so he had this list of, 50, 60, 70 different virtues that we should be growing in ourselves. And as we behave, as we take on certain actions, we are changing into the kinds of people that reflect those virtues. So I asked you guys what you might feel resonates with you. But of that list, think about which one do you think is the best one? Which one might be the one closest to Jesus? Which one may have been the one that you learned in church growing up? I don't know, when I read this and when I see them compared to one another, virtue ethics looks pretty good. I don't know. Social contract seems like it could really work, except the problem with social contract can be we create this us versus them a lot of times because I have a social contract with the people around me, but then let's say somebody outside that contract comes into our community. Well, we have no responsibility to that. So it might breed a little bit of in-group, out-group kind of stuff. There could be some problems with social contract. And then you can apply it to, like the trolley. There's the, you've probably heard, you're hiding a Jew in your attic during World War II, and they say, is there a Jew in this home? The deontologist says you cannot lie. Consequentialist says you must lie. Social contract could go, maybe social contract would say, by wanting to endanger the life of another person, they broke the contract, the social contract, so you should lie. You have every right to lie because they already broke the contract. It's just different ways to see it. Well, there's a 5th option. There's a 5th option, and it's so interesting what Paul does. And it's really important for us to see this, that the Jesus event breaks in with a new way of seeing what is right and wrong. Notice how Ephesians isn't just a list of rules. Do this, don't do that. We read sort of what's the closest to a list of rules. Stop lying. If you're a thief, stop stealing. There's these lists of rules, but there is a moral theory underneath it. That if you catch this, I believe it will solve so many problems in your life. If we can catch this and we can adopt this new moral theory, I think it would lift a lot of pressure off of us. And it would do, what it has done for the last 2,000 years, change the world. So what does Paul say? In Ephesians 4, he starts off like this. He says, don't live like the Gentiles live. Don't live like Gentiles. Which is a really weird thing to say to a group of mostly Gentiles. I say to you, stop living like a bunch of Americans. Knock it off. You're not Americans anymore. You have a new identity. He says, don't walk like the Gentiles. Do you know that they're futile in their thinking? They're darkened in their understanding? You know, we had an apocalypse. We had revelation. They didn't. And so what's happening with them is they are doing these self-destructive things. Living in sensuality, and greed. And they've been practicing these things. They've developed a pattern of self-destructive actions that they're callous to it. They become desensitized to the things that are killing them. So he says, don't live like the Gentiles. So how are we supposed to live? He says, don't live like the rest of the world. So how are we supposed to live? Here's what he says. Ephesians 2. You were taught with regard to your former way of life to put off your old self. Get undressed, which is being corrupted by its deceitful desires. Could you say deceitful desires with me? Deceitful desires. When you think deceitful desires, you should be thinking of the snake in the garden. She saw that the fruit was desirable. Eve was deceived. We've got a little snake here. Deceitful desires to be made new in the attitude of your mind. Remember, it's all about this apocalypse for Paul, a renewing of your mind. If your eyes are open to what Jesus has done, something's going to be changed. You'll be made new. And then you're dressed. And to put on the new self. Self, almost every translation will say self, but there's a better word. In the Greek, the word is anthropos, which means human. So, put on the new human. Created to be like God. Created to be like God. We're thinking Genesis still. Can't get away from it. Genesis 1, male and female, created in the image of God. Yes, put on this new self. So we have a new humanity we can put on, but the new humanity is designed in the way after the same prototype of what the ideal was supposed to be in Genesis 1. A new human created to be like God. In which way? Well, through righteousness, doing right by God and others, and holiness. To be set apart like God. This is how we are. So we take off our old self and we put on our new self. Right here. This is the groundbreaking, world-changing moral theory. Right here. Take off the old self, put on the new humanity. New humanity. So we're just going to talk about a couple of things here. First, change your clothes. Change your clothes. Okay, so I brought some coats. 2 weeks ago, when I was going outside, I'd have to put on layers. So we started this thing, me and my wife, we decided we're going to have outdoors time, 15 minutes a day. We'll go on walks. We'll take our baby out there, and we'll bundle her up quite a bit. But it made sense. It's not very comfortable to put on this many layers. You know, it's hard to get it right. You get like really sweaty and you can't really move very well. And then you know, you really got to protect the head because a lot of the heat comes out of there. So I have a little headband I got a couple of years ago. This is a pro tip. If you put a headband on and a hat over it, it works really well. So then I do this. And then I always lose my gloves. So these are Hannah's gloves that I've stolen. So I put these on. But this is ridiculous, isn't it? You imagine me preaching like this. But I mean, now that summer has come, today, this would be ridiculous to walk around like this. This is what Paul is saying, take off the old clothes. He says, you're dressed up, you're walking about like you're a Gentile still. You're not a Gentile. Take off the new clothes. Take off these old clothes. They don't make sense anymore. It's not a good fit for you anymore. Do you realize that a new age has come? Do you realize that heaven has invaded earth? Do you realize that new creation has dawned, that there is a new humanity? So what? You take off the old clothes of the old humanity. It's the wrong fit. It doesn't make sense. Do you see the difference between saying, stop wearing those old clothes and stop being a bad person? or even virtue ethics. So virtue ethics says that we need to behave a certain way so that we become a better person. But Paul says, you've been recreated already. You're already as good as it gets. Your goodness isn't a 24-hour shift. Your goodness is a gift from God. You've actually been given new clothes and a new way to be human. So take off the old clothes. And so I brought with me, because I do not own a robe, but Ivy actually owns 2 robes. So here is Ivy's robe. And there was a practice in the early church where when they would get baptized, they would actually take off their old clothes. They'd go in the water, get baptized naked. And then when they come out, they would be handed a new white robe. And it's marking that you are a new person. You've been welcomed into a new humanity as a gift to you. You didn't have to weave this together. You didn't have to stitch it together. It is given to you. Put on this new humanity. Take on this new identity that's been given to you of new humanity. You're new, recreated in the likeness of God in true righteousness and holiness. Here you go, as a gift. So you put it on, and when you put it on, it's natural to live it out. So we got what I say, there's the mini expressions. You read further in chapter 4, it'll say, don't lie. Why? Because when you lie, you're hurting the body. It doesn't make sense to lie. It says, don't steal. Instead of stealing, work hard so that you can be generous. Because that's what we do here in this body, in this new humanity. We love being generous toward one another. So work hard. It says, don't use abusive language. No, that puts a foothold for the devil. We don't do that here. It's a new pilot program. It's a new pilot program. That's why I like the word new humanity better than the word new self. Because new humanity, what Paul is talking about isn't just that you've been transformed, but that you are a part of a new transformed community, which is really nice. I mean, think about it. If you're the only one who's changed and you're living out generously and kind and forgiving, but no one else has, you're going to get taken advantage of. People are going to mistreat you. It's going to be miserable for you. Imagine if it's just you trying to do the right thing and nobody else cares. Imagine trying to be that consequentialist and you think really seriously about what is the best possible good I can make in the world. Do you know how far that would go? You would be like, do I really need a new shirt? No, I don't need this. There's people who need my money way better than me. Do I really need a house? No, I don't need this. Do I really need a car? And you can just talk yourself out of a lot of things. And some of that is really good and generous, but not very fun to live, kind of miserable to live. But if you live in a society where everyone's generous and giving and kind, it's it's a new humanity. It's a new society. It's like a pilot program. Like God is on the verge of recreating all of humanity, and He's using us to get it started and boot it up. What a cool thing we get to be a part of. It's a new pilot program. It's not just that you are transformed, but that the community around you is transformed. And I wish I had a better illustration for this. unfortunately, this is all I can think of, but when I was a youth pastor in Wisconsin, I was a goofball, and people would, poke fun at me, and we'd go banter back and forth and all that, but like, it would cross a line sometimes, and I'm like, okay, that's not funny anymore. Like, be nice, stop it. Well, when we moved to Champaign into Illinois, that all stopped, and people were really respectful and nice to me. And I'll never forget the day that Hannah, said a joke at me or whatever, and it was something I thought it was funny, but I never forget the look on her face when she looked around to all her friends, and no one else was laughing. And she felt bad. I had to tell her later that day, I said, Hannah, I guess you're just going to have to make fun of me in private these days. It's like the way we're living, lying, stealing, abusive language, that stuff worked in the old creation. That stuff worked in the old age. It just doesn't make sense anymore. You're just going to get kind of funny looks if you live like that in this new humanity. Do you see the difference? Do you see the difference between that and some of these other moral theories? It's like, it's already yours. Goodness is already yours. So we see these many expressions. Here's the good news about this. There's new humanity. We put on the new humanity. It means no more management. No more having to calculate everything and worry about how everything is perceived. It's this invitation to say, you've been given a new identity, now walk in it. It's still a lifetime of discovery. It doesn't happen naturally, but it takes the pressure off it. So this is the idea. Your goodness is a gift. It's not a 24-hour shift. May we spend the rest of our lives figuring out what is that God has done in my life and God has done in the people around me. And how is it that God is bringing heaven on earth? But we know that we are already blessed. We are already adopted. We are already redeemed. We have already put on the new clothes. So here it is. It's a gift handed to you. In your size, of course. Handed to you. Now take it. Put it out. Let's pray. Father, thank you so much